Hello, dear friends. Today we will be talking about the art of asking questions. Why raising questions is a must for any kind of society on the planet. And this is something that we would like to talk about. And, and I would like to differentiate between asking a question, raising a curiosity, and and the other part of the story. What is the most powerful tool ever, ever created by humanity? And can we say, is it the wheel? Can we say, is it fire? Is it a computer? Or or coming directly to the modern generation, is it artificial intelligence? This is this is the precise argument. And the answer to this question is no. Before every invention, before every discovery, before every revolution in human understanding, there was something much simpler, something at the very bottom. And what was it? It was a question. A child looks at the sky and asks, why is it blue? A student a student drops a pen and asks, why everything falls down? A scientist, or I may say an observer, a scientist, what he does, a scientist observes a strange phenomenon and asks, what is happening here? What's going on? What could be the reasons? A physician, a physician sees a disease and asks what causes it. So we can say that every step forward begins with a question. And and today I want to discuss something that every student pauses, but oftenly underestimates: the art and science of asking questions. This is something that we'll be talking about. This is something on which we would like to draw some light. And the point is why questions matter. Many students believe that intelligence means having answers. But to me, in reality, intelligence often begins with asking a better question. And to understand this, to illustrate this argument, if we imagine two students in a classroom, we have a classroom. In this classroom, we have two students. One memorizes every line that's written in the textbook. And the other student asks, why? Why is this true? The argument that's out there in the textbook. And he asks, how do we know this? And what is the evidence? And what could be the plausible evidence that supports the argument, that supports this idea that's written on this textbook? And now, if we move on years later, the second student that I talked about is more likely to become an innovator rather than merely a collector of information. That was our student one. So we can say that knowledge grows. It grows only when you ask questions. It grows through the questions. And what questions have done, what great jobs these questions have done. Questions have created modern science. Now, let's consider let's consider a few examples that can demonstrate that what we have been talking about. The first one, if we talk about the falling apple, the apple that falls. Now, whether or not the famous story happened exactly the way we tell it, or the people have told it, the important point is this. What's the important point? The important point is, why do objects fall? And no doubt many people saw fruits falling. And only a few asked the deeper question. They asked a fundamental question. And it was this questioning that raised the curiosity. That curiosity led to the work of an understanding of gravity. And if I take another example, say, for example, why do we become sick? Sometimes we are fine, sometimes we are sick. And for thousands of years, people have suffered from diseases. They have always remained the part and parcel of the old generations, and they are the part and parcel of the present generations. And many accepted illness as a fact of life. But some individuals they asked the question. And what was the question? What causes disease? I see the power. And those questions these questions have led us eventually to the discovery of what we call as microorganisms. And it has purely transformed the world of medicine. And millions of lives have been saved because someone asked a question. Someone rose a question. Someone thought about it. Let's take another example to differentiate. And if we look in the sky, there are these birds are flying. And why the birds fly? And students, they often see birds flying every day in the sky. And most of the students never think about it. They never put those questions. But when you start asking the questions, and the question could be, how does a bird remain in air? And this question has led to the development of what we call as aerodynamics. And eventually we have these aircrafts that are flying like birds in the sky. So every airplane you see is is partly is is partly the result of that curiosity that has led mankind to invent these flying birds. So I can say here there has to have the difference between a good and a great question. You cannot level all the questions on the same level. Not all questions are equally useful. Now let me try to demonstrate it in a way. Now if I consider the questions, let's take the question A. Let's take the question 1. What is photosynthesis? This is question number 1. This is a good question. Nothing wrong about it. It's a good question. Even you can put very behind the good. Now there is another question. Why did plants develop a process that converts sunlight into the chemical energy that supports the life of a plant? This question goes deeper. The question first seeks the information. What is photosynthesis? It's just asking you about the information, what it is. The second question that I talked about, the second question seeks understanding. Understanding that how things are happening when there is photosynthesis. So great questions usually contain words, and how we could differentiate the words. Why? How? What if? What if not? And maybe what happens when this thing will be considered? How do we know about this problem? How do we know that this is the reasons that supports the argument for this question? Now, these questions, what they do basically, they open the windows. They open the windows of understanding. They open the doors of understanding. Everyday example that we can have for students. And for that, let's examine an ordinary situation. Let's talk about an ordinary situation. And in current times, and that ordinary situation is mobile phone. And what's happening? Most students use smartphones. And if you have a curious student always asks us, how does my voice travel across hundreds and thousands of kilometers? This is how we have to move on. How does the phone know my location? I can be located instantaneously while I'm holding this phone in my hand. And how does a facial recognition, when we stand before a mobile phone or a device, and what it does, one device can generate hundreds and thousands of questions that we are holding in our pockets every moment. Rain. Many students enjoy rain. When there's a rainfall, Usually in hot seasons, people love being underneath the falling rain droplets. But curiosity asks us, where was this water a week ago? It's coming down, but where was it a few days back? And how did it reach the clouds? And why do clouds release rain at certain times? You have clouds, but they don't always give you the rain. Now, a simple rainfall, it becomes a lesson. It becomes a lesson in earth science. It becomes a lesson. We can talk about a bulb, a light bulb. Okay? A light bulb, it seems ordinary. Oh, come on, there's no light. Oh, come on, there is no light. We want it. The light is gone. But at the same point of time, yet questions emerge. And this bulb takes us to the fundamental questions. What is electricity? And why does this bulb becomes hot? The questions are there in front of us. Why does light travel so fast that there is nothing that can have the speed even close to the speed of light? Now again, a simple observation creates scientific exploration. It generates scientific explorations. The science, as I started with this argument, the science of asking questions. I mean, questioning is not merely an art. It's not an art. It is also a science. And scientists, they often follow the patterns. The patterns they observe directly or indirectly. Now what they do, first of all, they observe. And when they observe, something attracts the attention. There's something that attracts you. Now, how can I example it out? Now, let's take an example. Say, for example, now, if we have plants near a window, it grows towards sunlight. And what you do, you should ask, why do they grow in that direction? The plant that is surrounding my window. And then what should we do? We should try to come up with a plausible explanation to this question. And maybe there are answers surrounding it. Maybe perhaps the sunlight influences the growth of this plant. Now, the next thing comes out, how to test it. Because you have to test it. So to test this question, what we do is we conduct experiments. And when we conduct experiments, we learn. And the answers that we obtain, the answer may support or reject the original idea that I came up with. Maybe it's the sunlight that's driving the growth of this plant outwards. This method has driven the scientific progress for centuries. And what we live with fear. We live with fear of asking questions. That's the problem. And many students hesitate when they are in classrooms, when they are outdoors, when they are performing experiments, when they are writing something on their notebooks. They fear asking questions. They fear asking why. Because because they fear they fear appearing uninformed. But consider this carefully. What I'm going to tell you is you consider it. You just think about it. The student who asks a question may appear uninformed for a few seconds, for a minute. Okay, no problem. And the student who never asks may remain uninformed for years. So every expert was once a beginner. That is what is important for us. That is what is important for the learners. That's what is important for the students. Now, every professor that you have who's delivering lectures in the classrooms was once a student. Every researcher who's performing great experiments in the laboratory, every researcher once asked simple questions. Questions beyond science. You have to have a question. And questions are important everywhere. Your growth is dependent on your questions. And if we talk about history, in history, why? Why did civilizations rise and fall? So it's a question. In economics, you have a question. Why do the prices increase and decrease? Take an example of literature. In literature, why did an author write a story in this particular way, in this particular fashion? In society, you can have a question. Why do people hold different opinions? Questions. Dear students, dear friends, questions help us. They help us understand not only the nature, but also humanity. It teaches us. It takes us to the level of that understanding. And I can say you, it's the power of what if. Some of the most transformative ideas began with two words. What? W-A-H-A-T. What if? What if humans could fly in the sky? What if diseases could be prevented? What if information could travel instantaneously around the world? And what if machines could learn the pattern, the basis of artificial intelligence? And many modern technologies have emerged from such questions, from such arguments. What if? Let me give you a practical example of what I'm trying to tell you. Starting today, choose one ordinary object every day. What am I trying to tell you? I mean, it could be a pencil. A pencil, a leaf in the garden, a leaf in the yard, a glass of water, a pencil, a leaf, a glass of water, a mobile phone, a bicycle. Now see, it's gone. A mobile phone, a bicycle. Then write 10 questions about it. 10 questions. At first, this may seem difficult. It might look complicated. It might feel difficult. But after a few days, you will notice something incredible. You will notice something remarkable. Your mind will begin seeing questions everywhere, in every object. And that is the beginning of what we call as the growth of, should I reverse it? The intelligent growth. Now I think I should go for some closing remarks as I started talking about this argument. And what is that? I'm telling you, the future does not belong only to those who memorize facts. It belongs to those who basically learn how to ask meaningful questions. Questions transform observation into the understanding. Questions, what they do is, questions transform. They transform your curiosity into discovery, discovering the things. Questions transform students into great thinkers. So the next time you look into the sky, the next time you see towards the sky, you see towards a tree, a mobile phone, a raindrop, or even your own thoughts, do not be satisfied merely with seeing them. What I'm telling you is, ask. You should ask why. You should ask how. And you should ask, what if? These are the fundamental tools of asking questions. Because every great journey, as we see, every great journey of knowledge, it begins with a question. I hope you like it, and thank you.